Alright, I thought I'd do some more layout because there's something been worrying me from the start. And that is how pointy it's going to be from the side of the radiator there, once it's widened, out to the firewall. This has been a concern of mine from day one, basically, and I was trying to convince myself that I could make it work, but I don't know if I can. The biggest problem is that the firewall width here, from one side to the other, is 1/2 metre or 20 inches wider, even after I've cut all that down as far as I can go. Yet the body at the back is only 100 mil different, as I've pointed out many times. So my plan all along because I'm making this so much longer, to keep these proportions to the front, is to run that line all the way up to here. So you only have a narrow A-pillar showing, or if I go with the modern hinges, run it all the way up to the front of the door. So they use that in 33 on a lot of vehicles from that point on, to give the illusion of a longer bonnet. But because the firewall is so much wider, and I'm only increasing the grill width by 84 millimeters, which is what, 3¼ inches or something, 3.5 inches. This is what you end up with. That there represents the distance from the firewall after taking that curve out of in consideration. So to this corner, which is the outside of the grill, once that grill's been widened, don't forget. Now, I just wanted to visualize it. And that's how steep this looks. Like that. And really, really short. And I can't run that out back to the A-pillar to give that illusion of length. Because you'd have this weird little dog leg in it. So I'm back to how the cow sits now, with a really wide cow, but it's only this long. It's not going to work with that width firewall, as much as I've been trying to make it work. It's not looking good. It really isn't. See, that's the outside of the body line, but then you come in on that angle, that's pretty severe. Oops. Trying to look at the camera. Trials and tribulations. I don't know what to do. Do I say try and cut that back? But then you're going to end up with a off-centered steering wheel, aren't you? remove the vent and put the vent up here somewhere just below the window for your face. I've looked at that quite a lot of times. But I think the steering column would then... I know people go, get rid of all the modern stuff. What are you doing? Piss it all off. But we want the functionality and the safety of having the ABS and this information. You can't even control the air conditioning without the screen in there because it's all touchscreen. There's no buttons to push. And the computer heart that controls all electrics is actually in the back of the instrument panel for the whole body. And so you can see my dilemma. All right. Now, before I start throwing the dash away and starting from scratch, it's not like I'm not capable of doing it, it's just it won't be as harmonious. The biggest problem really is the firewall, not the dash width at the face at this stage. I'm saying at this stage. I'll take this in small jumps. So, what I thought, well, what is stopping me, stopping this point here, that one there, the corner of the radiator, running in a straight line to the outside of that A-pillar. And it's this corner here. So, I can take out the corner of this whole firewall because, yes, there's a lot of attached to the inside of there, but it won't affect the steering column placement or the ducting system and all that sort of thing, which I'm trying to preserve if I can. So, in theory, what I've done is I've set these up, and you can see the line is just coming on the edge of this, representing the width of the grill and the distance from the firewall, projecting this laser to where the A-pillar is going to sit here at the bottom, and you can see the line. So maybe, at least to start with, taper that hole in, taper all that in. So reduce the firewall by, well, probably 100 mil to give a little bit of leeway each side. So instead of being 500 mil or 20 inches wider, that reduces it considerably down to 300 millimeters wider or a foot wider. I mean, that's quite a saving overall. That's got to work in my favour with getting these proportions right, because, as I said, this actually has worried me from the get-go. Can I pull this off? And I don't think I could in the configuration it was, but you've got to have these. This is all part of research and development. I think the next step, like with paring this back slowly, I took it in steps rather than cutting everything out and then going, oh, I could have used that if I'd left it there. I don't want to go through that. So I think that's my next step, is taking out that firewall, part of the firewall corner, and pulling that across. I'll just do the one side. There's no point doing both sides and then thinking, oh, it's not enough anyway, and then you've done twice the work. I don't want to go too much narrower than that anyway, because you've got to remember also that the frame will be cutting in as well through there. another 62 millimeters. So I don't want to end up with too cramped a footwell. As you can see, it's bringing in a lot as it is, but it's still better than what I've got. It's a foot wider than, but you've got to remember that these have an awfully wide transmission tunnel. That's something that the gearboxes of days of old didn't have. So hopefully I can still fit my throttle pedal in. That's why, start at absolute minimum and work your way in from there. So that's what I'm going to have to do next step. So I've just projected that line, and you can see it comes down there, and that's almost enough through the whole thing for the frame also to the chassis rail to move across and not be cut in further, because I'm trying to save as much as the footwell as possible. Up the top here, I don't know if you can see the laser line without sticking my head in the way. Don't know if you can see that. It just, even projecting up to the top there, just where that inner structure comes in, it misses it by, I mean, it's on the wrong side of sort of a quarter of an inch or 6 mil. So I might try first leaving that structure in there and then tapering out from there, and see if that's enough. So I'd rather obviously leave structure unaltered if I possibly can. The problem is if you just take a chunk out of here and then you pull this across, it's going to come up short, it's because this will end up heading backwards. So I've got to keep that into account. You don't just go cutting a piece out like that. You've got to, you're even better off cutting down and overlapping to start with, and then trim away until you can do a full butt weld from one end to the other. But I'm still not even sure how I'm going to pull that across. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. So, because I've got to keep this level as well, because the hinges will be sitting, well, on a post back here. Or the other thing I can do, and that's where that structure can be saved, is the difference between the floor and up here, when this sits on here, that it's an inch or 26 mil further out on the bottom. So literally I can have an inch less out of this cut and have a sloping sidewall, the shape of what the body panel will be that attaches to it. And that might be a better way to go in this situation where it only needs to move across the most at the bottom. Because from that point on, the body slowly gets wider. So I think, especially because that will preserve that structure, that is a much better way to go, even though it's a more sort of a more difficult thing to lay out. All right. I found out why I had a microphone problem. I keep putting my finger on top of one of the stereo mic inputs. Anyway, after all these years of using this camera. All right. You can see the slope. It's better probably viewed on an angle like that. So this slope here matches the camber or the crown of the door, which is going to continue on into the hood sides or bonnet, or front quarter panels they'll become, which also matches the grille. So this gives you a good indication of what's happened. So if I'd gone straight down level, I would have lost that amount of area up the top, but that would have interfered with the throttle on this side and the air conditioning on that side. So there would have been just wasted space because I wouldn't have been using it anyway because of the shape of the door is going to take, and also the sides, front quarter panels that are going to come up through there and meet the door. So by having it on that slope, I was able to save the distance from there to there. I think it was 100 millimeters altogether from up there. So it's all been cut in, as you can see on this side, and so I've now got to cut and paste the other side and repeat. Alright, I've cut the other side now, and I just used a bit of angle line just to keep it a little bit straighter, although it does actually need the curve of the outside of the body. But I've just got a ratchet strap, and just to hold it there. It actually wasn't too hard to move, but you do have to put a relief cut down there where it steps in, because that needs to compress as this gets pulled around because of that step. You can see the step better there. I've flattened it out through here so it matches in there and gives me the most amount of foot room as I can get. There's no point stepping that in once it goes around the corner there. It's not needed anymore. So just thought I'd show that on. So this has to be extended, and so I've cut from the old door seal from down here. This is the same material thickness, as you can see, goes all the way around, and so a strip first has to be welded on here all the way from one end to the other, and then it can be welded to this edge here. I always leave it a bit long so then I can trim exactly to the contours after it's been welded on here. So that is the next step, to marry up to make it the same, and here's the finished product on that side. Oh, got the other side all completed, so ready to go on with the next thing. I was just trying to get something done that I know how it has to be. There's so much planning involved, and it can be overwhelming. And so the best way I find to tackle it is at least do something that I'm confident of. So I don't have to redo things and make mistakes. So trying to minimise that, it'll be unavoidable, I'm sure, when it's such a big project, but I can just do my best, that's all I can do. Alright, what I'm working on now, this is below the rear seat, and that piece of metal was in front of this, and I'm having it come, I'm basically putting it back. It was just shy of being flush all the way along here when I was cutting the seal out. I ended up cutting behind it, and as you can see the saw mark went in there, so I'm going to get a new piece to put in there. And I want to also, even though it wasn't before, I want to tie into, with some plug welds, into the face of that big reinforcing plate that goes up under and then trails off inside the rear axle kickover, I suppose you'd call it, the rear axle hump. So that's obviously designed to make a gradual transition from this extremely stiff area here of the rear seat, and then into the lesser area there, because that's always important with engineering, that if you have a change in torsional stiffness, that it's gradually in and gradually out. So that's obviously what the manufacturer has done there, and I'm about to cut it in higher, and that way when the frame comes along at this level here, I can get in there and stitch weld across the top and tie that into the rear half, and I'll trim a little bit of this off so it can be welded into the back of the donor wheel arch as well. So that's all part of the transition from the wheelish frame into the rear kick-up before the wheelish frame takes over again. Well, I just thought I would mock up the grill just to see if the measurements I've been taking fit reality. And I'm afraid they don't. What I didn't take into account is the curvature of the firewall. It's got 85 millimeters of curvature, which is, what, about 3.5 inches or something. A bit over. So the problem is, even with the engine set back all the way to what I'd work, as far as I can get it under there, the front of the engine is level with the back of the grille, which means that in front of that, inside that grille area, it'll be made 84 millimeters wider this way. It would need to fit the condenser, the radiator, and the fans in that little spot there, between there and there. That's just not possible. And to be quite honest, it's looking a little bit stumpy on the front. These limousines generally have a long bonnet to accentuate the big engine, and often they were straight eights. And so like this one, 888, was a straight 8. The original 888 of 1917 had a production V8, well before the 1932 Fords. So they've been around in the Willie's night. You look up 8-88, they had a V8 as their factory offering on a production vehicle. So that was later changed to a straight 8 for the later 88A and 80 of this era of 1932. So anyway, it looks like I'm going to have to move that grille forward. I would say at least 100 mil, if not more. Or 4 inches, which will help the proportions and everything, but what you've got to think of is, do you just move the grille forward, put this down, do you just move the grille forward in relationship to the front? I mean, there's plenty of room to do it, but do you lose some of the effect? I think you might have to either move the whole front axle and the guards and everything with it, or do a split. So I've got a lot more measuring to do. See, it looks funny there, because there the bonnet looks really long, and I've double checked and think, oh, I must have done something wrong. No, I've got everything right. It's just when you spread the width of this out each side, it draws the front in closer, and therefore it makes the front look short, let alone the extra length in the body compared to the bonnet. So you lose your proportions of bonnet length versus body length. So it'll look good with the extra 100 mil. I'll just have to work out if I do that in the wheelbase. Just as well, I already took out 165 mil because I was worried this might happen. So yeah, that's the engine there, 770. 730 plus 40 millimeters from the back of that pipe to the firewall, the transmission tunnel, ends up with 770 millimeters. Sorry guys, I don't know what that is in imperial. And if you go from that transmission tunnel, there's your 770. So what's that, about 2 foot, 4, 6, 7, 2 foot 7, somewhere around there. There you go. Alright, just as well I did a quick mock-up. And these lines here at the current represent what the angle would be back. So I'm not even sure that the HEMI would fit widthwise to that alternator now either. If you look, that gives you a bit of an angle. There you go, that's the sort of angle it's looking at. So, but if I make it longer, that will reduce, keeping the width of the grill the same further forward. So, now to work out how much further forward I need to move the grill to fit the engine in, because you've got to fit the air conditioner condenser, the radiator, as well as the computer controlled fans. So what I've done quickly here is laid that at the angle of the grill, because the front of the grill behind the grill bars is actually a 5-degree angle, so I've actually put the radiator at the same angle as the front of the engine, which is 3 degrees, so I can still tilt it back a little bit if need be. And that is actually the spacing that was stock, so it was in a lot tighter than I expected, to be honest. I have all that recorded of the distance actually from the front of there to the front of the condenser when it was installed. And so, gee, it must be hard to change a belt on these things. So I don't see any need to make it wider than what was stock. That is perfectly fine. Now, as for the power steering collar here, what I'm hoping is you can see how the V in the grill there shows up. That distance there, that I have the oil cooler in the V in front of the condenser, so I'll move it to the exact middle. So this is the stock setup, which I intend to turn vertically, and then it will fit within the grill and everything once it's been widened. As I touched on earlier, if someone can tell me, an automotive air conditioner specialist, I believe you cannot turn the condenser vertically. I have to find, like vintage air cells, a tall, narrow one, because I always see the tubes in a condenser, the radiator doesn't matter, running horizontally. And as far as I believe, I'll have to get a new one, otherwise it'd be perfect to run it as is. But at least this is more compact than I had in my mind. The whole fan, everything here is 200 mil or 8 inches. So that's pretty good. And the grill shell is 100 millimeters or 4 inches inside the grill shell. So that takes up 100 of the amount, but of course I need another 100. And so that would do it. So moving that forward 100 mil or 4 inches should give me all the room I need. Fortunately, you know, I've just shortened the body 165 millimeters, so I'm just moving the distance from the firewall to the grill and putting it in there in the engine bay instead of in the compartment. How's that sound? So instead of being inside the back seat, it is now inside the engine bay, which will give me better proportions and everything. So from the initial concern, I wouldn't say, I wasn't panicking at all. I'm thinking worry, that's probably the best term to use. I think I've got a solution. So that's what counts, is having a solution to the problem. Alright, now I have everything set 4 inches further forward, or 100mm, and it's looking much more proportional. So you can also see the black line here was the old line before it was moved forward, so you get some extra width as well, as you would expect. So that should give a little bit more room for the HEMI to sit in there. So that'd be the last thing I check, to make sure that at the widest point across the front of the engine, that the HEMI fits within that. Or instead of, I don't think this is straight enough. Well, instead of doing a straight line, I'll do a slightly curved one. So what can I demonstrate with? Here we go. I'm trying to pull the tape measure out. Alright, so instead of doing a straight line from the grill across to the A-pillar, like it is stock because of the trifold bonnet, I might do a slight curve. I could do the same as that one there, which ironically, it's been hard to tell, but there's actually a curve already in the grill that is actually, by coincidence, I never checked it until now, is the same as the new shallower curve that I've made for the door sill. So I thought that was quite funny. So what would that look like? You're basically looking, what I would do is widen the back of the grill shell. It's got to be widened out a bit, but leaving the front where it is, if you know what I mean. So that's what it would look like that. And this intersection here between the body curve and that, rather than just being harsh, I would, over the A-pillar, put a slight curve in it to blend the two in. So that'll also produce more width, because if you come out a little bit, it already gives more width down there. So these are possibilities I'll look at when I get going. As you can see, if I use a curve, I've got more gap to the front of the firewall as well, to leave a flange for a bit of stiffness when it goes past. So, yeah, I think it looks much more proportional. And now the distance is actually stock, believe it or not, from the front of the grill to the firewall. The middle of the firewall is now stock, same as the willies, rather than to the shallowest point here of the firewall. So the middle of the firewall now matches to the front of the grill, where before it was the side of the firewall matched the distance to the grill. Just that extra bit has allowed everything to fit, and will keep everything looking more proportional. So that's what we've ended up with. It will either extend my wheelbase, because I based all the dimensions off the side of this firewall, not the middle of that firewall. So either I extend the wheelbase 4 inches, or make a compromise and move the grill 2 inches further forward and the wheelbase 2 inches further forward. We'll see what looks proportional when that time comes. I just needed to know that these things can be solved before I get too far in constructing. But now I can construct everything from the firewall back there knowing that everything from the firewall forward has a solution. So there you go. Well, just sometimes you put a lot of time and effort into something, and then you don't want to waste that time and effort, so you put even more time and effort into it because you just don't want to scrap something and start again. And I've spent way too many hours, as you can see, straightening from, this was the other side of it. You can see how much curve this had. This is the outside of the B pillar, and this was the inside, and it's got a join to the rest of the stock there, because the B pillar used to point in at a dramatic angle, and of course now it's basically straight up and down on the inside. So I'd gone to all the effort of straightening, and that took a lot of effort. And then it tapered off this way in the wrong direction, so I had to straighten that up and make it wide enough as well, because you can't just suddenly have the pillar disappearing. Anyway, long story short, I think I'm better off just cutting the adjustable seatbelt, upper seatbelt mount out, and then just making a new piece. It has to taper in like that still, because up this line here represents the window line, and that was the taper that was there from the factory. And then rather than continuing this side continuing back like that, I straightened everything up, but it just doesn't sit quite right. There's just too many pieces. First, I didn't have any more of the material thickness, and then I was walking to the shops this morning. I came across these switchboard covers that someone had thrown out. They've been sitting there for over a month. And I hadn't really paid any attention to them. Well, they happen to be the exact gauge that I need, that I could build the top half of that B pillar from scratch. So already the pieces that I put on were from some sort of filing cabinet. So now I'm swapping that for switchboard. Well, upcycling I call it. There's a little bit of surface rust there under the powder coat, but this one hasn't got it. So yeah, pretty heavy duty doors, I'll tell you that much. The whole back of the box is up there too. That's got multiple holes in it, and the mounts for the fuses and everything, circuit breakers. So I think I might just make them from scratch. I was putting it off, but I've worked out how to get the matching radii, with some done in my big folder and some done with the little handmade folder over the back there, and I can get just the right combination that I need for the folds, because this has very limited how much I can step down. That it's something had been stripped out in times past before it was given to me, but it's good enough for one side of the fold. It's just got a softer radius in the top here, and I can use that one with that. So yeah, I think I'm just going to start again. Sometimes you just got to... I've spent way too much time. I could have made it from scratch in half the time, but I thought, oh, that's a nice challenge to see if I can straighten that all out, just from, stretching or shrinking or whatever, or a combination of both. And sometimes you just got to say to yourself, it's time to just... I was just about there too. I only had one little weld left to go, but I'm just not happy with it, and then I'll never be happy with it. I'm not even sure if I want to keep this adjustable up and down either. I never use them. My wife doesn't either. And even though she's shorter than me, because the seats, as she moves forward, the seat goes up. So her shoulder goes up with it, and she's never adjusted it either. So generally gets shoved to the uppermost position and left there. So I might not even bother putting that in, because then I've got to worry about the plastics that cover it and the slide that goes up and down and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it's worth it. Oh well. Crazy. Hours and hours, days and days, but it doesn't look it. And that's why you keep going, oh, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Anyway, this gives good indication of just how much curve inwards the 300C or SRT B-pillar had. And I will be going straight up from there vertically. So you can see, I'm hoping this wire here, string, represents the window line, and I'm hoping I can keep it, this trim, up to the window line, and then obviously I'm going to have to make my own from there. But that's also what makes using this adjustable seatbelt height difficult, because it's on a curve. And of course what I'm replacing with is flat, but it's not only that I am coming in like this, and this is going out straight and going to be wider up here, because that's how wide from window to window it is on the willies. So I've got to keep that width all the way up. So this is going to be too narrow even if I could straighten it out. And to try and just straighten this bit out and put that in a piece, it just ends up. We've never ever adjusted these. So I'm just going to put it in the highest most position, which is what we've always done. And the range of movement is actually not that much. So this is what, when you push that plastic piece on the outside, and this clicks into 3 different positions. So it only goes from there up to there. That's the maximum it goes up. So that's not a lot of movement. And what does that add up to? Let's see. So going from the top of that to the bottommost position, that's as far as it'll go, 50 mil, 2 inches of movement. And to put all that in and then cut this piece out and graft it into here is not worth it. So here you can also see the finished replacement piece after I wasn't happy with this, because it had just too many angle changes and it was more complex than it needed to be. And I've just replaced it with that width there at the start and just ran that width all the way to the top. So this is going to give a lot more strength to the B-pillar. And there's no need, because the pillar doesn't curve in, the inside of this pillar doesn't need to flatten out. That's what a lot of this is for headroom, because when you curve the B-pillar in towards your head, you have to make sure that this thins out so you've got enough head clearance. I'm basically only going to have half a degree tilting in, so on the outside, and the inside I'm just going to leave vertical. So it's just way too easy. And I've replaced this in probably 20% of the time that it took me to piece this together, straighten it all out and add that extra piece, add this triangle piece in just to make it work. And in the end, I'm throwing time away and I should have just started. Part of the fact was that this is a weird 1.5 millimeter material, and I don't think you can even buy that. It's normally 1.6 or 1.2. So someone's got it, because this door from the electrical cabinet was also 1.5. I think it's only hot rolled, so it was quite a bit harder to bend. But yeah, out of that door, I've cut one piece out. I've still got another door to go. and I've got enough to do the other side, and to make both out of one door. So I cleaned all the powder coat off the inside because there was just a few little rust spots, which it just came off with the strip disc. That's what a strip disc looks like, sometimes called a seaweed disc, made for stripping paint, and also it's great for a final finish before paint. And but on the outside I literally run it off over and nothing flaked off except where the bend lines were, especially when I've had to rework the bend diffraction. This was out about 1 millimetre, so I moved the bend 1 millimetre by hammering it over the bench. And yeah, it's come out really well, and I should have gone down that route. Well, if I'd had the material, I would have gone that route from the start. It's one of those things. Anyway, I'm happy with the decision to replace. Now I've just got to do it all over again for the other side, and I'll just put in a single seatbelt mount here to replace this big adjustable one. I've just cleared it with my wife. She goes, no, I've never adjusted it, so no point at making it more complex than needed. So there you go. Just sort of an update. Well, we got the B pillars extensions from the anyway, they're finalised up to this sort of point here. So what you can see on the other side, or if it shows up on camera, the string line. So the bottom of the aluminium straight edge on that side, and that angle is going to be the window sill level. And so from the bottom of that to 100 mil short will be the top of the door. So obviously the window is shorter than that, so the windows won't look as tall as these giant totem poles. But the total all the way, I left it long, but it happens to work out that there's 100 mil extra above, or 4 inches above where the door will be, and that is actually the max height of the roof skin. So I left it there in case I should want to peel that inwards, and then a brace will go from one side to the other below the roof once that gets established much later. Of course there's going to be braces going back and forth between these, between the A pillar and the C pillar. So there's a lot left to do yet. I'm going to, that's what I got those pieces down there for. I'll put some braces in on an angle to make sure these stay level. I made sure that they're all nice and level and vertical. So to suit the Willys doors, I'm pretty sure I'll have to do suicide doors, so they'll hinge here and then open up this way, and both locks will be sitting in here because this is where I have the maximum depth back to this in the middle, because that's where the car comes out and then starts slowly going back in again in both directions, as you can better see it like this. So that's exactly the same as stock, but I was actually thinking of just, it'd be easier just to mount it here and get in it conventionally, but there's just not enough room for the depth of lock because the door is going past here. Part of the inside of the door will be past here, and that's what the lock sits in, and so there's just not enough depth anymore at back this because of the amount that's come inwards since then. I'll double check it a little bit later before I make my final decision, but yeah, that's the way it's looking, is that it'll be suicide rear doors, the same as stock. But I'm glad I'm getting somewhere. It's been very disheartening not seeing anything different every time I come out, and this took me way longer than I should have by playing around with the old ones. I wasted too much time, but you know, I learned a lot. I learned that I could straighten something that severe, it just wasn't what I was after in the end. So these are a much better, simpler design, because it doesn't curve in like they did on the 300. So I didn't need it to taper off for more headroom. This has got way more headroom because it's just going straight up rather than tapering in above the window sill line like the original 300 donor was. So anyway, progress, that's all that matters. Hopefully I can start establishing and getting a little bit more productive, because this is a difficult time to have all your T's crossed and I's dotted.